I just want to be free.
I can set you free.
Julie, thank you so much. There's just so much that I want to say right now about the weak Republican leadership, but it does seem like there's been quite a stiffening of the spines. First off, I'm assuming you've been following and watching Pam Bondi and her confirmation. The overall takeaway of how Pam has done from like a 35,000 perspective.
I think she has performed very admirably. I admire her cool that she has kept under some of this ridiculous questioning. I also admire her passion in talking about defending President Trump and denouncing the weaponization of the DOJ and FBI against the president, which has been going on for years. So I think that she has so far struck a good balance in defending sort of not the Department of Justice, but upholding, of course, the rule of law, a fair administration of justice for all Americans, but also suggesting that she is going to be tough in this role as Attorney General and hold accountable those who are responsible for destroying the public's trust in this institution. That is imperative. And so I think she's done very well so far.
Okay, so this must be a breath of fresh air for you, having gone to so many of the trials of Merrick Garland's DOJ. Merrick Garland, sniveling weasel, sat in that exact same chair on this exact same committee and said, I'm not going to be partisan. I'm a ponderous judge, right? And lo and behold, he has brought, true Gestapo-like terror upon the innocent people of this country. So let's zoom in on the January 6th question. Pam Bondi's takeaway, and correct me if I'm wrong here, as you are the expert, but Pam Bondi's takeaway is, if Donald Trump tells me to pardon J6ers, I'm going to look on a case-by-case basis, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to say yes to the president, and we're going to follow. We're going to follow that path of pardons, although it certainly wasn't specific, and it left, I think, maybe a lot to be explained. Let's go in. Pardons for J6ers. What did you think about her answer? What do you think the Trump policy should be?
I think that her answer related to reviewing upon request by the president J6 cases on a case-by-case basis is sort of what we've been hearing from other officials and Trump transition members. The president seems to have indicated a more broad brush approach to that. So we'll find out more on January 20th. I think that she does have to be careful here because you don't want to turn this into, every day for Democrat is January 6th of 2021. We saw this again. Their first questions to her about, forcing her to say that Joe Biden was legitimately elected in 2020, going back over well-worn territory, phone calls to Georgia election officials, et cetera. These people just cannot, they are trapped in like this time capsule.
It's like a psychotic ex-girlfriend.
Yeah. And January 6th, it's absurd. Yeah. So I do think that she has to establish herself as just, open-minded at this point. We'll review what happened here. But I will say, aside from that, once again, watching Republican senators intentionally avoid mentioning J6 defendants, their own constituents who have been abused and targeted by this DOJ, and instead continuing to bring up, again, well-worn territory. Yes, you should not be surveilling protesting parents at school board meetings. No, you should not be spying on Catholics. However, that pales in comparison to what has happened now to close to 1,600 Americans, mostly on misdemeanor charges, throwing the full weight of the federal government, DOJ, FBI, DC federal judges, and DC juries against powerless, penniless Americans. I am really tired of hearing the same canards from Republican senators and House members about school board parents and Catholics, et cetera, and intentionally overlooking the abusive, vengeful, and destructive persecution of their own constituents. These Republicans just have to do better because President Trump is going to need their support to justify pardons. And you just simply do not see that happening yet. Maybe we'll see more in the second half of this hearing, but so far the Republicans, and to have Tom Tillis actually, criticize any thought of pardoning people accused and convicted by DC juries of attacking, assaulting, or interfering with police. They just cannot get on the right side of this issue.
Yeah, it's one of our major contentions with the speakership race that caused us to so vocally and angrily go out against John Thune and John Cornyn, because they both absolutely ate and digested and then used hook, line, and sinker the left-wing attacks on January 6th political protesters. They were useful idiots in this. And it seems like that hasn't been broken at all in the Senate. There wasn't a single Republican senator asking about pardons for January 6th. It seems like that would be like top of mind, actually, for Republican senators. So what should happen? Because there is now a sort of thought process that, how is this going to shake out? You saw J.D. Vance this weekend. He said, we're going to start with people who are nonviolent. That caused a little bit of friction. How would you like to see this process play out?
Benny, the conduct at issue is not January 6th protesters. The conduct at issue is this Biden regime. The conduct that needs to be investigated is not further J6ers who committed violence, who got in a scuffle with police, who entered the building who shouldn't have. That we've already exhausted. What more can we say about these J6ers and their conduct? The issue is how this DOJ, FBI has been weaponized, brutally weaponized. Benny, Matthew Graves, the DC U.S. attorney, is still arresting people. There was a new arrest announced yesterday. There are 2 trials happening in Washington, D.C. today for J6 protesters. They are still sentencing people to prison. They sentenced 2 people this week. That is the crux of the weaponization of the DOJ and FBI. So I only want to hear condemnation, not of J6ers, but condemnation of this DOJ, FBI, DC U.S. Attorney's Office, and these DC judges who have put their imprimatur on this unprecedented abuse of federal law against misdemeanors. And so that has to be the talking point. That has to be the narrative moving forward. I don't want to hear violent versus nonviolent. I want to hear what these prosecutors have done, what Merrick Garland and Lisa Monaco and Matthew Graves have endorsed, the judges and what they have said and done. That needs to be the narrative moving forward, in my opinion.
So, yes, that's right. That seems to be the dividing line here, with many people saying, no, this system has been entirely rigged to the point that nobody got a fair trial. And every single January 6th trial is fraudulent. And then other people and those in the potential administration positions of power saying, we're going to do it on a case-by-case basis, and we're going to separate them into groups. What do you think about those 2 strategies?
Well, I think the low-hanging fruit, and this is sort of what I predict, will be the day 1 executive order relating to J6ers, and that is those who have been convicted or charged with the common misdemeanors. Nonetheless, even though they've been charged with minor misdemeanors, low-level offenses, that the chief judge of the DC Circuit said in early 2021, they've never handled Class B federal misdemeanors against protesters. But these charges have been brought against more than 1,000 J6ers. So that would be the easiest pardon. Of course, there is going to be some controversy over pardoning those who were convicted, say, of seditious conspiracy, which is this rare statute that has only been reserved for foreign terrorists, like the World Trade Center bomber, the first one, and his conspirators, not American citizens. for organizing a protest on a Wednesday afternoon on government property. And then, of course, this assaulting, interfering, impeding police officers. I believe that caseload is around 300. You have a much smaller percentage who were accused of some sort of actual physical violence against police. Again, overlooking the fact what police did that day. Using excessive force and, of course, lethal force in at least one instance, that of the killing of Ashley Babbitt. So, but this can't drag on, Benny. So hopefully, and I believe that there is a process in place where they're closely looking at what would be the most controversial pardons, and then dealing with that. But it can't be a protracted process. Rip the Band-Aid off. Make this about the abuses of the DOJ and FBI and federal courts in Washington, the partisanship of DC juries. I posted this after we talked the other day. The Department of Justice has a 100% perfect conviction rate in DC jury trials. Over 250 defendants have been brought before DC juries. We're now close to 3 years of jury trials. Not a single person, Jay Sixer, has walked out of a DC jury trial exonerated. Not one. I mean, that should tell you right there how highly partisan and biased this process has been and remains to be. So everyone should be pardoned because of the process that they had to endure. Even those who acted badly, got in confrontations with police, they were not able to present a fair case. Their juries were not moved out of Washington. Their trials were not moved out of Washington. This is such a rigged, banana republic style legal and judicial system in Washington. And it has to be remedied, because otherwise they will continue to do it.
So this does ring so unbelievably true when people who weren't even at January 6th are getting 22-year sentences. It's like,
right.
It is beyond third world. It is the trampling of our civil liberties and rights. So if you were advising President Trump, you'd say, pardon them all.
I've said this before, pardon them all, with the exception of a few who have lengthier criminal records, right? Mm-hmm. So we want to look closely at those. There are a handful, but otherwise you have people who are veterans, police officers with no criminal record, who have been thrown in jail for 6, 7, 10 years for minor confrontations with police. And Benny, I'm going to say quite frankly, and we saw this today in this hearing, there has been an opportunity squandered here to make this case very forcefully. I know the president had said it on the campaign trail. He has said it in interviews, but he needs support in making the case about the unfair legal and judicial system in Washington. And he has not gotten support for the most part from Senate and House Republicans. So there's a window of opportunity here that has been missed to make the case to the public. It's not too late, but everyone needs to be on the same page here. And when you see people like Tom Tillis, repeating the Democrat talking points about what happened that day, you can certainly see why this would be, in some instances, an uphill battle for the president and for Attorney General Pam Bondi.
Yes. So at the very least, we can expect a massive shift and change. President Trump has promised thousands of pardons. He said this many times on day one, and he's been followed up by Stephen Miller and so on these promises. So I guess we'll wait and see how these gears turn in Washington, D.C. You've seen them turn, and they've been horrific. If you want to actually know what justice looks like, you must follow Julie Kelly. Here is her X page. Get on there. 800,000 subs on X for Julie Kelly. God bless you for fighting the good fight, doing it way before it was ever popular. And now, at the very least, Julie, we're gonna count our blessings. At least we can have these conversations. At least we can have these debates. At least there's light at the end of the tunnel for something. So thank you, Julie.
Thanks, Benny.